Hi YouTube, welcome back. It's been a little minute since the last time I did one of these. I don't want to make excuses, but Christmas, New Year, I was then sick for a little bit. Anyway, that really doesn't matter. We're back, first episode of 2026, and this is something that is at the forefront of my mind at the minute because I've been going through my next intake, my January intake for my program, the Recomp Blueprint. And in a lot of the onboarding forms, I was getting a very similar theme from people around, look, I train regularly. I already train 4 or 5 times a week, right? I've been doing that for years, frankly. And for whatever reason, my body, hasn't yet changed, right? I'm doing all the right things. I'm eating well. I'm training regularly. So what is it that I'm missing? And to be honest, there are different answers to that question depending on the person, right? But I wanted to go through the main things that I have seen within just the first couple of days of those people coming on board as to kind of why they might be in that position, and crucially, how we're going to fix it together. By the end of this video, my aim is that you understand, if you feel like you're in this position, why this is happening, and crucially, what you can do in order to change it so that we can get you moving forward in 2026 to build your best physique yet. I would say the most common reason is that a lot of people are exercising, right? Which is obviously objectively great, but they're not necessarily training, right? Exercising or working out and training really are two different things. This whole point basically boils down to your body not changing just because you want it to, right? There really needs to be a very clear signal to your body to build muscle, which is essentially what you're looking for. And every physical change will come from this chain. We have the training stimulus, we have the recovery environment, which leads to the adaptation. If there is a weak link, either within that training element or in the recovery element, it just won't happen. And muscle will only grow if the signal or your training, right, is hard enough, heavy enough, progressive, i.e., getting harder over time, and specific to your goal, right? Specific to the muscle groups that you're wanting to target, not just random movements. And these are some of the things that I see a lot when it comes to reviewing people's previous training, for example. When it comes to the structure of those workouts, a lot of the time they're quite random, right? It might be that they change one week to the next. Or maybe they get bored as they go along and think, do you know what, this isn't working, I need to change this up before they're actually ready to. Or maybe if you're honest with yourself, you're doing the same weights and the same reps that you have been for the last 6 months. Maybe you've got the bit about doing the same thing over and over again. You've got that nailed, but actually you're not making it any harder as you go along, right? You're not increasing the demand, meaning that that adaptation signal is never really sent. And when it comes to the specific type of training plan that you're following, you do want to make sure that it's ticking some big boxes when it comes to being effective for muscle growth. Rather than delving into all of the literally thousands of exercises you could choose that would be good options for growing muscle, assuming you're applying the right amount of intensity, I'm going to give you the overarching principles. We generally want to be training the muscle group in question through their full range of motion. This means no half squats, right? This doesn't mean ass to grass necessarily. Your perfect squat depth is going to be very reliant on your particular mechanics and mobility. But you want to be finding a squat pattern that allows you, with your current structure and anatomy, to get into a position that loads that muscle through a full range. If you notice that your barbell back squat has you falling short of 90 degrees and you're not able to get a good amount of depth, maybe you could try a front squat, maybe you could try a split squat, maybe you could try a leg press. There is no perfect movement, just a good movement for you. Full range of motion. We also want to be training the muscle group's function. Let's take the core as an example. We have multiple different functions of the core, right? So we could be thinking about spinal flexion, literally flexing and extending the spine. That is a solid function of the abs. We're thinking about things like crunches, right? Variations of crunches. The core also works really hard to keep the spine stable. So we're thinking about things where we need to resist flexion and extension and rotation. Something like a plank, or a dead bug are perfect for this, where you're resisting movement against force. Think about what the muscle group does and make sure that you have movements that cover the actual functions of them. And you want to make sure that whatever you're choosing, you can load appropriately. This is where workout programs that contain movements like a reverse lunge into a bicep curl or a squat into an overhead press fall short when it comes to effectiveness for muscle growth specifically. Now that's because if you're overhead pressing the same amount that you're squatting, something is wrong. The muscles of the glutes and the quads are huge in comparison to the muscles of the shoulders. We should not be using the same weight for those two movements. As much as kind of combo exercises or more kind of circuit type training might seem fun and varied, and you might get a good bit of a sweat on, you might feel the burn, all of those things, which by the way is great if you enjoy it. But here we're talking about muscle growth, right? Why you're not seeing your body composition change as a result of your training. And this is one of the most common reasons that I see. So full range of motion through their various functions that can be loaded appropriately. If you're ticking those three boxes, you are onto a winner. The last piece on training, which is again quite a common one, is that you're just doing too much or trying to do it all at the same time, trying to run a marathon and beat your squat PB and get 10 pull-ups. Like, you can't always be working towards all of these goals with equal success. Oftentimes, something has to give. You can't just train 7 days a week and hope that your body will respond. The recovery section of that chain that I mentioned earlier is just as important as what you're doing in the gym. Make sure you do have rest days and make sure you're actually resting on them. You're not going on a shakeout run or a recovery swim. You are just doing nothing, going out for a walk if you feel like it. The second reason is that you are under fueling for the goal that you have. Again, this is super common and something I've seen actually very recently with a couple of clients. You might be eating clean, right? Making sure that you're not overdoing it on carbs and generally keeping your calories at this invisible ceiling that you have for yourself as your maintenance because a calorie calculator told you. This is the thing, the fear of fat gain can often really be holding women back when it comes to their body composition goals. The optimal environment for muscle growth is maintenance. Sure, you can do it in a slight surplus too, but honestly, most people get this wrong. Maintenance is a really good place to start. And when I talk about maintenance, I do not mean 2,000 calories, right? It might be 2,000 calories, but it also might not be. For a fit, healthy, active individual, it is very likely that you can handle more than 2,000 calories. If you're a particularly small human, say under 5'2", then maybe your calories are slightly lower. But generally speaking, I think a lot of women put themselves in the camp of, well, I can only eat 1,800. If I eat more than that, then I just gain fat. Genuinely, that is really often not the case. And it really is so hard to build new muscle tissue when we're not maximizing maintenance. If we are just about eating enough to not be in a deficit, that is not the optimal spot for muscle growth. And just to be clear, maintenance is pretty self-explanatory in the form of its name, right? You're not going to be gaining body fat at maintenance. Body weight is going to be staying pretty stable. But what you'll find when you lean into finding where your maintenance range is and maximizing that you have so much more energy. And what does more energy mean? That you can train harder, that you can give your body that stimulus that we're talking about when it comes to that adaptation cycle. If your kind of default setting is like eat less and move more, that really isn't going to be the optimal space for body recomposition. And when it comes to body recomposition, we're thinking about more muscle and less fat, right? And whether you do that simultaneously at the same time, or whether you go through a specific muscle growth phase followed by a strategic fat loss phase is going to depend on your start point. But genuinely, if you haven't got that training right, you haven't maximized your training, and your nutrition is matching that training, then you might actually be someone who can see muscle growth and fat loss at the same time, even if you're not brand new to lifting or in a bigger body, which are usually the two main camps that people fall into for that simultaneous recomp. It could also just be down to other lifestyle factors that are holding you back. Things like stress, sleep, the amount of general movement you get on a daily basis. If you're sleeping 5 hours a night if you're lucky, unfortunately, you're going to have a hard time seeing your body change. Sleep is a huge part of that recovery piece that I'm talking about. Where you can, we need to be making sure that sleep quality and sleep hygiene is on point. Give yourself a bedtime like a child. Remove your screens. If you're watching this and you should be asleep, you have permission to turn this off right now. Sleep is so precious. That is hugely important. Again, if you're incredibly stressed, you have lots and lots of different external stresses within your life. Again, it's going to be hard to see those changes that you're wanting to see. So whilst not all stress is manageable and something that you can just navigate, where you can, where you have control over those external stresses, I'd highly recommend that you do what you can to keep those in check. Give yourself some specific wind down time each day. Do something self-soothing. Think about doing some journaling. Maybe have a little stretch before you go to bed. Anything that's going to just calm that nervous system down. Again, stress really leads into that sleep element as well. And it could be that you're someone who is literally chained to a desk for 10 hours a day, so gets around 2,000 steps maybe, if they're lucky. This isn't going to be the deal breaker, but I really would suggest, where possible, trying to find some time to get a good amount of steps in each day. Really, we're looking for somewhere north of 6,000 steps for most people. And that is just generally for health purposes. Literally, biggest bang for its buck is in the first 6,000. Anything above that is going to be helpful for body composition purposes, right? We're increasing that neat section of our energy expenditure. Really think about how you can get those steps in a reasonable spot. Per se, north of 6, but really between 8 and 10 is a really good goal to shoot for. Now, look, it might also be that you're doing all of those things. You're nodding along going, I know that I have an objectively good strength program that is geared towards hypertrophy in the areas that I'm wanting to see that happen. I'm training with enough intensity. I've got my volume right. I'm recovering. All of that is in a good place. I'm also making sure that I'm maximizing my maintenance. I'm prioritizing protein. I'm not fearing carbs. I'm using them to fuel my training sessions. My lifestyle is generally in a good place. I'm sleeping. My stress is not taking over my life. I can manage it. I'm getting a good amount of steps each day. And honestly, if you're ticking all of those boxes, the only reason why you're not where you're wanting to be yet is time. And I do think this element is underrated and underappreciated. It takes a long time. I cannot stress that enough. And this is where it is so important to make sure you're actually tracking what progress you're making, rather than just going on vibes, right? Or just feeling like shit every time your luteal phase comes around and you're making no progress because you're bloated and there's water retention and inflammation and your body image is in the toilet. There needs to be objective ways that you are tracking what direction you're moving in. Frankly, if you're listening to this and this is a useful topic for you, you do not need the scales. The scales are telling you nothing helpful whatsoever. We're not trying to lose fat. We're trying to build muscle, right? We don't really care what the scales are saying. All we want is to see our physique starting to change. The best way to do that is proof, pictures, reality, what is actually happening to your physique over time. Take your progress pictures, same lighting, same clothes, same time of day if you can. Probably once a month. You probably don't need to be taking them much more than that. Also, you could start taking some key measurements, right? The smallest part of your waist, maybe, your hips, particularly if you're trying to grow glutes, your arms, again, trying to see kind of muscle growth there. Can we measure the bicep? Like taking those key measurements, taking those progress pictures and watching your strength improve. Please be tracking your lifts. Watch over time to see that your strength is getting better, right? If that's happening over time, and it's not just a case of I put a bit more effort in this week compared to last, you can pretty well guarantee that there's more muscle on your frame to allow for those lifts to actually happen. Make sure you're tracking your progress and just manage your expectations. Genuinely, for most people, if you're someone who's been training a couple of years already, you're not brand new to lifting, and you're aiming to grow muscle, you want to be looking at pictures once a month and you want to be settling in for the long haul. This could be years. And I'm going to let you in on something. It's never over. Never. And that could sound disheartening, but I really don't want it to be. I want this to be inspiring Actually, this should be a journey of continuous self-improvement. How can I get 1% better? I've just been through a 12-month phase of focusing solely on muscle growth and maintenance. I've then entered an 8-week cut. I lost maybe a few kilos, but I can see the muscle that I've built, right? At that stage, you absolutely, I'm sure, will be thrilled with the progress that you've made, but it's not done. I guarantee you, most of you will be at that point going, cool, amazing. I've made some incredible progress. I'm so proud of myself, but what can I do next? What's the next step? What's the next version? That is fitness. And that is how it should be, really. Like, there really isn't this magical finish line. There absolutely are moments along the way where you think, I have built some incredible strength. I'm so proud of the body that I've built. But genuinely, if you're doing it right and it's a lifelong pursuit, it is always about how can I be better? Managing those expectations that it's a long-term process and actually just settling in and enjoying it is genuinely the most powerful advice I could give you. And I really hope that's been helpful. Please do drop your questions in the comments. I always love to hear from you. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will be back next week, I promise. In the meantime, have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. Love you, bye.